All right. Let's grab a seat. Good morning. What? I just found it. Yeah. Come on, Bruce. Jeez. Oh, I know. Yeah. Anybody else have what felt like a really long week? I was talking to somebody and we're like, oh, we got an extra hour of sleep last night and we feel more tired. Anybody feel more tired? I think it's like you trick yourself. Like, I'm gonna be able to sleep in an extra hour, and so I can stay up an hour later, right? And then you wake up at 3 hours, and then you wake up at the normal time anyway. And for some reason on Monday night, I was up until midnight. For some reason, 18 innings was that reason. Yeah. You stayed up that late too? Wow. How faithful. Wow. Yeah, it was a long week, a good week in a lot of ways. We finished up our regular season for soccer, both varsity and JV, and it's been a lot of fun. So this year, if you don't know, both of my daughters, Abby and Eden, are in the high school at Philomath, and they both are in the soccer program. And so I get to what? Why are you looking at me like that? I get to interact and coach both of them, and it's just been really fun to see both teams and the progress. But in particular, the JV team. A lot of these girls I coached in middle school, and there's a difference when you get into high school. Maybe you've recognized this, and the focus gets a little bit better, and the intensity gets a little bit better, and just the progress that we've seen a lot of those freshmen in the JV girls make has been really fun to see. And I'd put it out there and say our JV team could compete with a lot of the varsity teams around the state because they just work really hard and do a great job. We had senior night on Tuesday, which was an interesting thing for me. And one of the things is every senior night we have this conversation because like the girls are announced and they come through the line and they like high five all their teammates and then they get to me and it's like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, we're gonna do one of these awkward hugs, or are we gonna do a handshake? What's gonna go on? And the seniors this year is like, hey, we're gonna plan this out so that we know what to do, and it's all gonna be the same, so it's not different. And I was like, well, it's going to be different for one. And they're like, what? Why? And I don't. And they're like, oh yeah, because Abby, your daughter, is a senior, so we had agreed upon we're gonna do like a handshake with like a little pat on the shoulder, right? Like this is gonna be really good. And the first girl came up and I've known these girls. They're not only soccer players, but they're Abby's friends, and I've known some of them in youth group and in church context and throughout the years. And the first one is like, I don't want to do this. She came up to me. I don't want to do this stupid handshake. Can I just give you a hug? And then the rest of them were the awkward handshake. And then we got to Abby and we hugged and cried, and it was wonderful. So this is my confession. Amy talked about confessing last week, like it's important, right? In the third inning of the Dodger game last night, it's Game 7 of the World Series, so there's nothing left. That's the last one, and the Dodgers gave up a home run in the third inning, and they're down 3-0. And my confession is, I believed that they had lost. And the boys were like, and even Abby, she's like, it's just a third inning. Like, come on. And if you don't know, they came back. They won in 11 innings, so extra innings, and they won 5-4. And but this, I think there's a positive takeaway for me in this. My faith in the Dodgers is not as strong as my faith in God. And that's good. I'm growing. It's getting better. My perspective is maybe getting a little better. So,
there's still some more room to grow.
Thanks. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. Well, we've been talking about covenants forever. And we're going to talk more about them, but this week was an interesting week, like I said. Several weeks ago, I got a text message, and I was asked if I would be willing to come give a teaching at a CEF training, and it was going to be on Saturday, and so Colette, you guys remember Colette? She came, lots of energy, did a really great job, and she's like, Pastor Matt. She always calls me Pastor Matt. I'm like, it's just Matt. Anyway, can you come give a teaching on Daniel? And I was just like, yeah, CEF's great. I could do that. And then as the time went on, I was like, it's soccer season, like playoffs are starting, it's hunting season, it's on a Saturday, which is like a day off. Like, why did I say yes to this? Like, what am I doing? But it's been really good, and I've been able to dig into the book of Daniel, and we're going to do that for a couple of weeks together. Daniel is a fascinating book. Anybody, like, really dug into Daniel? Yeah, Daniel is a fascinating book. There's a lot going on, and way more going on than we could ever do in one Sunday. We're gonna take a couple of Sundays. There's some history that's happening. There's some context of the history of the Israelites that's going on there. There's some different events and miracles that are happening throughout the book. There's visions and interpretations of dreams and visions. There's prophecy about things that are going to come, and there's all sorts of lessons all throughout the book of Daniel. And so I want to give you a couple of quick hitters really quick on the overall book of Daniel that I find fascinating, and maybe you're like, I could care less about that, but it's interesting to me. The book of Daniel is taking place somewhere around the 6th century BC, and it's the context of the exile of the Israelite people from Judah and Jerusalem into Babylon, into captivity. And Daniel is a young man at the beginning of the book, maybe somewhere between 15 and 20 years old, or even a little bit younger to begin with. Daniel is taken into captivity along with some other prominent Israelite or Hebrew men. He is most likely royalty. He's a kinsman of one of the kings of Judah, and so he's taken into captivity somewhere around the year 605 BC. And this is something that was a little bit new to me. We think about the exile in conjunction with the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem, which is in 586 BC. Well, there's three times where captives are taken. So there's these interactions with Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar, and a couple of different kings throughout that period of time that Nebuchadnezzar is dealing with in the kings of Judah. And so Daniel and some prominent Israelite men are taken captive, probably around 605 BC, and they're taken to Babylon. And then in 597, another group of captives are taken, and then in 586, a lot of the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem takes place, and more captives. The rest of the captives are kind of taken into Babylon. Some people are left in Israel. There's a remnant that's left in Israel. And there's some indication that there's some correspondence back and forth, that there's a little bit of correspondence with those that are remaining in Israel and those that are in captivity. Anyway, Daniel and some of his friends are taken early because they are identified as strong, well-off members of Hebrew society. They are capable of learning. They have probably been raised up and taught in the royal culture there. They're able to discern things and learn things. And so the king of Babylon wants to say, hey, I want the best men that are going to be smart, they're going to be wise, they're going to be strong, they're going to be able to be a part of my kingdom, because I want my kingdom to be as strong as it possibly can, and that includes taking the captives from other nations that we have conquered, and Babylon is kind of like at the height of world power at that point, and so when we capture people from other nations, we want to bring them in, and they're going to become our servants, and they're going to attend to the king in the palace, because they are the best of the best, and we want the best of the best to be watching over Babylon. And so Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and I always get this last one wrong, Azariah, also known as Shadrach, Meshach, and to bed we go. That's right. Abednego, sorry. And so they're there with the king. One other really fascinating thing about the book of Daniel, it's written in two different languages. Chapter 1 through the very beginning of chapter 2 is written in Hebrew. The rest of chapter 2 through chapter 7 are written in Aramaic, which is kind of like a cousin language of Hebrew, but it's the language that Jesus was speaking as well, and later Hebrews. And then the final chapters 8 through 12 are written in Hebrew as well. And so there's a lot of different theories on why that would be. One of the theories is that those middle chapters are addressing that specific culture and some of the events that are going on in that culture of Babylon. And they're written in a language that maybe the Babylonians and other nations would be able to read the account of what happened in Babylon and these amazing events that happened, because there's some amazing events that happened during that, and they would be able to read that. And then the other sections are more addressed to God's people and to the Hebrews, and there's a lot of prophecy, and there's interpreting dreams. And I don't know why it's split up exactly the way it is, but it is. A couple other things that are really interesting about Daniel, and then I promise we'll jump into it if you're bored. The events of Daniel are part of God's discipline on his people. And we've been talking about covenants and the blessings and the curses that are a part of the covenant language. And when God made a covenant with his people, he said, these are the blessings. If you follow me, it'll be good. And if you don't follow me, it will not be good. And we see that in Leviticus chapter 26. There's kind of a list. And it's really interesting. If you look down at, like, it says in Leviticus 26, like, if you don't follow me, then this. And if you still don't follow me, then this. And then after that, if you still don't follow me, then this. And that, like, progressively these consequences and this discipline gets worse. And it's like over and over and over again, God is telling his people, like, hey, you need to follow me or there will be a consequence. And if you still don't follow me, there's going to be another consequence. And he's just laying it out and kind of giving them this chance after chance after chance, but it still comes with some discipline. And chapter 26 ends like this in Leviticus. Yet in spite of all of this, so in spite of all of the discipline that's going to happen, in spite of all the things that are going to happen to you because you are not going to follow me, and God knows that they're not going to follow him, I will not In spite of all this, while they're in the land of their enemies, while they're in the land of their enemies, they're going to be taken away into captivity, into Babylon. While they're in Babylon, I will not reject or abhor them so as to destroy them and break my covenant with them, since I am the Lord their God. So essentially, he says, you are going to break my covenant over and over and over and over again. It's going to happen. And there's going to be consequences for that. But in spite of all of this, I will not break my covenant with you. I will not break my covenant with God's people. I will not wipe you off the face of the earth. Even when your enemies capture you, they will not fully destroy you. I will keep my covenant with you. And part of God's covenant is that he is going to bring a Savior, that he is going to bring redemption from their sins. And I think in Daniel, we are seeing this, because Daniel and his friends, as we read throughout the book, have favor with their enemies. They are put in positions of power and influence with their enemies. In spite of all of this, I will not reject or abhor them so as to destroy them and break my covenant with them. The events of Daniel are also foretold by the prophet Jeremiah. And Jeremiah, for years, at the beginning of chapter 25, Jeremiah kind of gives this list. He's like, hey, for the last 23 years, when King Josiah was 13 years old, in the 13th year of his reign, and anybody know when Josiah took reign? 8, yes. 8-year-old boy, Josiah, took reign. And in the 13th year of his reign, for the last 23 years, Jeremiah had been telling the people, follow God, follow God, follow God. If you don't, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be bad things that happen. And yet, they don't listen to Jeremiah. In fact, they get pretty upset with Jeremiah and one of the things that he says, and they like have him arrested, and that it's going to be bad, and eventually they let him out. But they go against Jeremiah, and to the point where there's someone that prophesies falsely about what will happen to God's people because they don't like what Jeremiah said. And that's Hananiah. I don't know if it's the same Hananiah. Greg, do you know? Same Hananiah? It doesn't say. But one of Daniel's friends that comes with him into Babylon is also named Hananiah. So Jeremiah 25 through 31, and I'd encourage you look at that. If you're interested in Daniel and what's going on, the context of Jeremiah 25 through 31 really speaks into what's happening in Babylon, and it gives some more of the dates, some more of the context of what's going on. But today there's really just a couple of things that I want to look at in the book of Daniel. Daniel's taken off into captivity along with his friends, and it's probably not just the 4 of them. They're listed, they're prominent in the book. There's probably more. And they're taken and put into training. And it's probably about a 3-year period that they are in training before they are sent to the king to attend the king. And during this time, they're supposed to be given provisions from the king. This is the food that you will receive. This is the training, the education that you will have. And we're preparing you so that you can go be attendants for the king and you can do your very best job. And we have this interaction in chapter 2. Actually, I think I have one more before that. This is chapter 1, actually. We have this interaction in chapter 1, verse 8. Daniel determined that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine he drank. So he asked permission from the chief eunuch not to defile himself. God had granted Daniel kindness and compassion from the chief eunuch. Yet he said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king who assigned your food and drink. What if he sees your faces looking thinner than the other young men your age? You would endanger my life with the king." So Daniel said to the guard, whom the chief eunuch had assigned to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servant." We're in verse 12. "Please test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then examine your our appearance and the appearance of the young men who are eating the king's food, and deal with your servants based on what you see." He agreed with them about this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, they looked better and healthier than all the young men who were eating the king's food. All throughout Daniel, there's lessons. And I don't want to pretend like everything we read in the Bible we can directly relate to our own lives, because that's not true. Not every single word in the Bible was written to directly relate to our lives, but we certainly can learn from the examples of how God has dealt with his people and how God's people have followed him throughout the ages. Daniel and his friends are in a home that's not their own, a land that's not their own. It's not the land that God had promised them. They've been taken captivity into a foreign land, into a land that worships false gods and foreign gods and pagans. A land that is crawling with all sorts of immorality. They're given the opportunity to have the best of the best. And Daniel determined that he would not defile himself with the king's food or wine. Why? Why is this so important? Because Daniel is living under the covenant of God. And part of the covenant of God was to not eat certain things or drink certain things, because they were not pure and clean before God. It wasn't like, hey, I don't really like this food, I don't want to eat this food. I'm sure it was very, very good food if it was given by the king. But Daniel understand following the commands of my God. And remember last week we looked at Psalm 119? The whole psalm is about obeying the commands, the precepts, the laws, the ordinances, the decrees of God. That's what it's all about. And Daniel understands that. My life is all about following the commands of my God. Because what comes with following the commands of my God? A right relationship with my God. When I obey my God, I am in right relationship with my God. And there's blessing that comes from that. In covenant terms, when I obey, there's blessing. And Daniel recognizes that, and he's living under that covenant. And so he determined, I'm not going to break this covenant. I can't imagine being in that situation. Every excuse. I would have every excuse to say, well, I'm no longer in Israel. I'm just a captive. This is what they give me. I have to. I have no choice. I have to eat this. It's what I'm surrounded by. It's what the culture is doing. So I'm going to do it too. And I think this is a lesson that we can look and say, we're surrounded by a culture that is not our home. This is not the land that God has promised us. This is not the future. This is not our permanent home. It's a land that has many false gods. It's a land that has idols. It's a land that has evil. And it can be really easy to just give in to one of those things. One of the things Joy and I really wrestled with, what do we do with Halloween? Right? We're living in a land that celebrates it, and what do we do with it? And I can't stand up here and say that we have a perfect answer for it, because we don't. It's something that we go day by day and year by year, and we pray about, and we just try to determine what's best for our family, and how do we follow God in that. The culture is celebrating it. How do we follow God in that? And what we decided is it is about the state of our hearts and how to follow God in that. There's some things in our culture that we're not going to partake in. Ghosts and demons and zombies and dead things. We're not going to partake in that. That's a part of that culture that we don't want to defile ourselves with. But we are going to have a fun time with our kids, and we're going to eat candy and get stomach aches and all sorts of stuff. And so that was an area that I would say we're still working through. How do we live in this culture and not defile ourselves with the things of this culture? And it's a question that I think needs to constantly be asked, because we do live in this culture. We do live in this Babylon, if you will. And so how do we live there and not defile ourselves with it? I think we see something that is common in Daniel's life, and we see it in chapter 2 as well. Chapter 2, verse 14, it says this simple thing that's easy to look over. Daniel responded with tact and discretion. Do we respond to the things of our culture, the things of our world, with tact and discretion? Because there is a right way to go about things. And when Daniel was presented the food, he didn't smash it down and kick it in the face of the guard and say, I'm not going to eat that junk, get it out of here. From everything that I can read, Daniel was respectful. He asked a question. He said, is it okay if we do this? And you can test us for 10 days and see if we're healthy enough. And then you choose what to do after that 10 days. You choose whether to give us food from the king's table or to give us water and vegetables. And there's a... Anybody ever heard of the Daniel plan? Yeah, it's a diet. It's about eating vegetables and drinking water, and I don't know that I'm on board with that. But Daniel was. And it wasn't about the food and the water. It was about following God. It's not about the food and the water. It's not about the things of our culture. It's about following God. And are we doing what we need to do to follow God and not defile ourselves before him? And we'll just look at the next story here to close our time in chapter 2. Well, first to finish that, my Bible has a section that's titled Faithfulness Rewarded. And so Daniel and his friends, they don't take the food and drink from the king. They have water and vegetables, and they are stronger and healthier, and they're rewarded for those things. And the people recognize, wow, look at these guys. They're respectful. They said, test us, see how we are. And they're learning, and they're going about things, and they're stronger, and they're healthier, and look how smart they are, and they seem to be wise. And they receive rewards and promotions within the kingdom of Babylon. They're given influence and authority because of their faithfulness to God. They receive the favor of those that they're under captivity. So then we have this really interesting section. Nebuchadnezzar, he's the king, right? And it says in the second year of his reign, he had a dream, and it troubled him. It was a weird dream, and he didn't know what it meant, and he was troubled by it, and so he had all of his sorcerers and all of his diviners and mediums and magicians. He had them all come to him. He's like, hey, tell me what this dream is and tell me what it means. So it wasn't like he didn't tell them what the dream was and then ask them to give him interpretation, because they could give any interpretation they wanted of that dream, right? If he told them what it was, they could make up whatever they wanted. It's like, I need you to tell me what my dream was and then tell me what it means. And they're like, well, we can't do that. Nobody can do that. That's not possible. Just tell us what the dream is, and then we'll tell you what it's about. And he said, nope, not going to happen. And the king is like, okay, I'm going to have you all put to death. All the mediums, all the sorcerers, all the magicians, you're all going to be put to death because you can't tell me what my dream is. What is the point of you being here if you can't do your job? And word gets back to Daniel, and hey, this is what's going to happen, and everybody's going to be put to death. We're all going to be put to death. And this is where we have verse 14. Sorry, I didn't go through that. There we go. And if you want to click through it up top, that would be great as I read this. Verse 14, we're going to go through 23. Then Daniel responded with tact and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to execute the wise men of Babylon. He asked Arioch, the king's officer, why is the decree from the king so harsh? Then Arioch explained the situation to Daniel, so Daniel went and asked the king to give him some time so he could give the king the interpretation. So Daniel has tact, he has respect, he has discretion. He's not getting all mad and angry and frustrated. He goes and he just asks for a little bit of time. Then Daniel went to his house and he told his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, about the matter, urging them to ask the God of the heavens for mercy concerning this mystery. So Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of Babylon's wise men. The mystery was then revealed to Daniel in a vision at night, and Daniel praised the God of the heavens and declared, this is verse 20, may the name of God be praised forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells within him. I offer thanks and praise to you, God of my fathers, because you have given me wisdom and power. And now you have let me know what he asked of you, for you have let us know the king's mystery. Daniel does something really important. And this is something I really admire about Daniel and really want more of in my own life. When he recognizes the situation that he's in and how dire it seems, he calls his friends together and he says, we have got to go to the Lord together on this. He doesn't simply go himself and ask God. He finds those that he trusts, that he knows are following God, that he knows want the same and want the best from God. He says, we must go to God on this matter together. We must seek the Lord together because of this matter. And I think too often as followers of Christ, trying to follow God, we try to do it alone. We try to figure out the things on our own. God, just tell me what to do. I've got this situation. I don't want to bug somebody else with this situation. We'll figure it out. I'll just figure it out. And Daniel doesn't do that. It doesn't say that Daniel tried to figure it out by himself for a while, and when he couldn't, then he went to his friends. It says he immediately went to his friends and said, let's go before God and seek his wisdom and understanding in this matter. And I think as a church, it's something that we need to be more willing to do. It's something I need to be more willing to do. Say, I don't have the understanding. I don't have the wisdom in this matter. I'm letting you know that. Luke, I don't have that understanding. Daniel, I don't have that understanding. I'm not sure what is to be done in this situation. Will you go before the Lord with me to seek understanding from God and see what his best is and what his plan is for this? And God responds. He lets him know the mystery of it. And we're not going to get into the interpretation of the dream this morning. But he does interpret the dream, and this is how Nebuchadnezzar responds. Actually, this is the end of, this is Daniel here. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and his kingdom will not be left to another people. It will crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it itself will endure forever. You saw a stone break off from the mountain without a hand touching it, and it crushed the iron, bronze, fired clay, silver, and gold. The great God has told the king what will happen in the future. This dream is certain, and its interpretation is reliable. So this is the end of Daniel telling the interpretation to the king. And he's essentially saying, the God that we serve is setting up his kingdom forever. And there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about it, Nebuchadnezzar. There's nothing that any of these other kingdoms are going to be able to do about it. They will all be crushed. They're all temporary kingdoms. But the God that we serve will set up his permanent kingdom. And it says that Nebuchadnezzar fell face down and he worshiped Daniel and he gave orders to present offerings to him. And the king said this, verse 47, "Your God is indeed God of gods, Lord of lords, and a revealer of mysteries, since you were able to reveal this mystery." And he promoted Daniel and he gave him generous gifts. When Daniel chose to make his life about following God and not preserving his own life, when he chose to seek the wisdom of God with his friends, with other believers, when he chose to love others and be respectful and have tact and discretion, he received blessing after blessing after blessing, even in the midst of a culture that was far from God. Daniel was still able to experience the blessings of God. And because of that, he was able to show King Nebuchadnezzar the greatness of God, and King Nebuchadnezzar recognized the greatness of God because of what God had done for Daniel and through Daniel. I think God wants to do that with us as well. He wants to use us to help the world around us recognize the greatness of God, that his kingdom is set up forever and ever, and there's nothing that can ever come against it. It is a kingdom that is permanent. Look forward to digging more into Daniel with you guys, because there's a lot there for us. There's a lot of similarities to our lives that we live now and the life that Daniel and his friends were living. And so I just want to pray and ask that God would lead us, that he would direct us, that together we would seek his understanding in these things. God, we are here this morning because we recognize and we proclaim you as God of heaven and earth, as the creator of all things, as the one who is above all things, that there is nothing too great for you, that there is no mystery too difficult for you to understand, that there is no kingdom on earth that can stand against your kingdom. And God, I pray for understanding with all of these people here, that you would make known to us your mysteries, that you would make known to us the things that we don't understand, that you would help us to see how to follow you, help us to know the ways that we can interact with the world around us and not be defiled by it. God, we seek your wisdom and your direction. We ask that your Holy Spirit lead us in these things. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for being here and being patient with me this morning. If you are in Supergroup 1, don't forget, we're having a meal across the street.